Antarctica is a spectacular destination. Ice, snow, wildlife. You just never know what we're going to see. We'll try to make the best of all the conditions in order to give everyone a spectacular, memorable trip to Antarctic Peninsula.
When a person decides to come to Antarctica, they are enriching their life experience. They are coming to a place where you can see species nowhere else on Earth. It awakens something inside of people. It shows them the world in a new way, and it inspires them to care.
There's some indescribable simplicity to this, because what we are seeing is a world still caught in the heart of an ice age. So here we get a sense of just how puny we are inside an extreme environment.
Running Man or sports. That tells your camera that you want to increase the shutter speed so that it stops the bird that's flying.
The Drake Passage is a wonderful place to observe seabirds, especially albatross. We have perfect conditions, just enough wind for them to fly, not too much to make it difficult. And we're watching these albatross, and they are the true masters of this domain. Cruising for thousands of miles, circling the globe, feeding out here. It's an amazing sight to see.
We have crossed the Drake. It's been a very good crossing, and here we are very close to Livingston Island off Hannah Point, and if all goes well, this will be the first place that we're going to land at. So we are all ready to go, and of course very excited. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to Antarctica!
So it's the first day of our expedition. We've landed here in the South Shetland Islands. We had a wonderful Drake crossing. We made the crossing in a day and a half. We're on Livingston Island in the South Shetland Islands, and we're at Hannah Point. What's wonderful about Hannah Point is that we have 3 species of penguins right in front of us. We have Gentoo penguins, parents with their chicks. Chicks are all crushing right now. We also have chinstrap penguins with their chicks. And in addition to that, we have breeding pairs of macaroni penguins. This is one of the few places that we can consistently see macaronis and only a few breeding pair. Now, in addition to the penguins, we have giant petrels on nests. We have elephant seals who have hauled out in order to go through their catastrophic molt. So they're here wallowing. We can hear them right now, elephant seals around us, and we even have Antarctic fur seals. And we've got hairgrass, one of 2 vascular plants in all of Antarctica. We've got hairgrass all around us. What a great way to start this expedition.
Completely overwhelmed. Penguins everywhere, nothing that I would have ever expected. That and the smell caught my attention really quickly. But you know, I was surprised at how unaffected they are by the humans. Just walking up to people, I was expecting that they would be a little bit more afraid, and they certainly are not.
I think the most fun thing was watching the chicks scratch underneath the moms and dads and have them regurgitate. It was a lot of fun.
It's an out-of-body experience. It really is. I mean, you've been to the zoo, then you see the videos, but this is just, it's amazing. It's beyond belief. I actually started smiling about halfway here, and I really haven't stopped smiling. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is just the first day.
It's been such an exciting morning. We woke to clearing skies, and almost the first thing we encountered was a group of killer whales which have been searching up and down the fjords here. We came right upon them, and also excitingly, we had sight of a set of researchers, scientists here who are both tracking, identifying and taking DNA from these killer whales.
When we're trying to study killer whales is we try to observe them, and that typically involves getting in a zodiac, getting up quite close to them and taking photographs of them to identify individuals. But also we put satellite tags on them, and when we can't be here in person, we can monitor the movement and diving behavior of the whales remotely through satellites. So today we were trying to put satellite tags on the whales and also collect small skin and blubber samples to see what they've been eating, and with the tags to understand what they're going to be doing in the future over the next 3 or 4 months. Whenever we put tags on killer whales around the world, we learn that they roam further, faster, than we ever imagined. But we've been really surprised in Antarctica that killer whales are diving much deeper than we ever imagined. They're diving to 600 or 700 meters. That's deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. And that's 3 times deeper than killer whales were thought to be able to dive. For centuries, there's been a single species of killer whale recognized in the world. But by doing genetic studies and looking in depth at these animals, we've learned that there are actually several types of killer whales around the world that are probably several different species. So we're starting to understand what makes them different. And that difference is related to prey specialization. They eat different things in different areas. So our research studying what they eat, how much they eat, really tells us why they're different. And ultimately, these are the world's largest predator. And we still don't know how many species there are. It's very exciting.
Well, we tore ourselves away from that, and now we've just come to Nico Harbor, which is a beautiful sheltered inlet where the old whalers used to park their ships in the early 1900s. This will be our first continental landing, and there couldn't be a more beautiful place. We're surrounded by 3,000 and 4,000 foot mountains. There's a glacier tumbling down to the sea right in front of us. The captain, reckless as ever, has parked his ship right on the beach, and we're coming ashore to look firstly at a Gen 2 colony and their chicks, and then we're going to take a climb right up the side of the snowfield, the edge of the glacier, and look across this glorious prospect. Nico Harbor, Antarctic Peninsula. Nothing finer than this.
So what we're looking at here is a gigantic iceberg. And icebergs come from glaciers or from ice caps that break off at the shoreline and then float out. So it's terrestrial ice. You know, it formed from banked up snow, thick snow layers that compressed into ice and then made its way to the sea and floated away. The blue color is what's so fascinating here. And so the colors that you see are what are left over when light penetrates and passes through the ice. So the longer wavelengths are absorbed, filtered out, so to speak, and the shorter wavelengths pass through. Let's look at a piece of ice here. The reason it's white is because it's filled with air bubbles. Look at that. Same with this, even though you can see the layering of the bubbles that formed, you know, this is from the face of a terrestrial ice, you know, from a glacier. So, minke whale, southern minke whale. It's the smallest of the baleen whales that we'll see here. 8, 9, 10 meters long. That one's not a full-size adult. These guys are real speedsters.
Morning everyone. Well, we thought this morning that we'd be Zodiac cruising in style. So we have prepared some homemade hot chocolate. And since you are very, very far down south, we have some antifreeze that comes with that as well. There you go. Cheers, skål! Enjoy the morning!
Look in the water right here. Isn't that spectacular?
Oh my gosh, look at that blue.
This is the most numerous of all the Antarctic seals. It's thought there may be 20 to 25 million of them.
Wow.
We call them crab-eater seals, not because they eat crabs, they eat krill. Look at the face on this one. In order to breathe, they actually have to exert muscular contraction to pull open the sides of the nostrils, and when they relax, then it snaps shut. It's like an elastic door.
So leopard seals are known to be one of the top-end predators in all of Antarctica. However, their primary diet still consists of krill. Unlike most species of seals, leopard seal females are larger than males. A large leopard seal female would be pushing 12 feet, 800 pounds plus. To me, this animal exemplifies the perfect balance of grace, power, and beauty.
The adventure continues. This is our third day moving south along the Antarctic Peninsula. And this morning we're going to land on Peterman Island. And on this particular island, we're at a fascinating geographical and biological point. We're at the southern end of the Gentoo penguins range, at the northern end of the Adelie penguins range. And so for this reason, this island has been a focus of some tremendous biological work that's giving insight to the climatic changes down here. A very famous French explorer, Jean-Baptiste Charcot, came here in 1909, parked his three-masted bark right up in here in a narrow channel and spent the winter of 1909. When he came here, there were 1,000 Adelie penguins on the island and a tiny scattering, less than 60 pairs, of the Gentoo. Well, things have changed dramatically, because in the early 2000s, a fresh study was made on this island monitoring the two penguins and their breeding success. Now there are less than 300 Adelies left from those 1,000, and the 60 Gentoos have gone from 60 to 3,000. This is telling the climate is changing here. Adelie is an ice specialist, Gentoo is an open water specialist penguin. So their fortunes have changed drastically as the climate has warmed and the ice has retreated.
So we wake up this morning very far south of the Antarctic Circle, sea ice all around us, and we find the Holy Grail. 2 emperor penguins, these gigantic birds, very rare in this area. What an amazing sight, perfect morning.
Here we are on Detail Island, just off the Antarctic Peninsula, on a beautiful, glorious, blue, sunny day. This island is the home to an Adelie penguin colony. 50 years ago, it was home also to a British research team working back there in Base W, and it had been used for 3 years with mixed success. Then, in the 3rd year, the resupply ship came and the ice was too thick, the sea ice. They couldn't get in, they couldn't bring the new supplies, they couldn't bring the new men, and it was decided on just an hour's notice to abandon the base, load up what they could on the sleds, have the dogs, the 40 dogs, pull them out, and they basically closed up the base. And they never returned. The place was just sealed in time. The British, during the 1950s, built a string of scientific research stations to mark their presence, to make their claim on this part of the Antarctic Peninsula. They were then competing with Chile and Argentina for control of this area. It was also a time of renewed science after England had regained its footing after World War II. And they built a whole chain of bases. This was one of them. They planned to have continued monitoring of the weather, of the electromagnetism, of the currents, and they would do a complete survey of the geology. So that was its main purpose. They had left this as a time capsule where we can come back and see the type of scientific research that was being done at this and dozens of other similar bases, American, Russian, French, and British, across Antarctica in this most incredible of times when really for the first time Antarctica was mapped.
This is a photo from 1904 when the Francais was frozen into the ice right there. So that's neat, and it's nice to be able to see this. Yeah. There's the slope.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So over here where we're standing, you can see the stone hut. And Charcot had this constructed in 1904. They were doing magnetic studies here. And they had to put something together away from the ship because there's so much iron, of course, on the vessel. So they built this out here. Must have covered it with canvas or the like to have a roof on it, but no nails or any metal. So that made it much more appropriate, you know, for the magnetic studies. The view's not bad either.
Paradise is very similar in some ways to Detail Island, in the sense it's a very steep area, so it protects it a little bit from ice. It's covered with all this algae that just grows during this bright season, probably filamentous diatoms, but there's lots of sponges. Those are nipple sponges, and then there's the orange sponge and sponges, and there's a nudibranch, which is a dorid nudibranch that eats the sponge. But the sponges have all kinds of defenses, but they're strange creatures. It wasn't until the last couple of centuries that people thought they were even animals, because they don't seem to do anything, and you could put them in a blender and they kind of reorganize themselves. And then somebody, not that many years ago, spent like his entire summer figuring out that if you look at, they have little holes that bring stuff in and big holes that push things out. And if you add up the cross-sectional area of all the holes, they equal one another. And they never made a movie out of that because nobody really cared. But they are kind of amazing, and they have lots of defensive compounds that have been looked at for pharmaceuticals, just the way plants are, because they can't move. And if you get low and you start looking up under things, everything has to be protected, otherwise it's destroyed by all of the ice moving around. There's some shrimp in there, little prawns, that like to just hang out. They're just eating things on the surface of stuff, but all that brown algae there, if you touch it, it'll just come off on you there. Oh, they're very fast shrimp, but they're like a one-trick pony. Once they take and they jump, they don't do anything else. They just give up, and so you can touch them. And people have been trying to commercially harvest this thing, and when people on the ship say, well, we could get some shrimp for dinner, and I say, yeah, if you dive for 14 hours, maybe you could feed 3 people. There's a lot of them, but they're pretty small, but they have beautiful little purple antennae there. And this guy was just a pet. It just said, okay, don't kill me, I'll do anything you want, wash your windows and all that. So then there's the sea whips. These things take longer to grow, so they're only in the more protected areas, but they're all dependent on water moving back and forth, so they can just collect all of these little organisms. Here's a big dorid nudibranch, and it's going across a sponge, and you can see below, because the thing's moving upward. Here it comes again, and it's got this groove that is put into the sponge, and I don't usually see that kind of damage. They seem to only be able to take so much of the toxins. So I put this guy in, the flubber worm, as I call it. It's a polychaete worm because of Ian. It reminds me of Ian so much, but I think he'll have more to say about it later. And it's got those little thorns on it, but it doesn't do him any good because it gets eaten by somebody else that we'll show you at some point. This is another worm, another polychaete worm. It's buried, and those are just its little tentacles that come out of its around its lips, and you can see it's drawing them in. It makes a little gutter there with the little hairs that pull in things that fall down. Another shrimp staring at me. Here's yet another worm. This is the feather duster worm, and these these little feathers are just very specialized tendrils that come off of the lips, and they gather things and they can sort them out, particle size. Large things they throw away, medium-sized things they store to make the tube they live in. Little things they usually eat. If you scare them, though, because it's a lot of work, then they just take and sink in. So here's a little bit closer, but they made that tube with mucus and the stuff they collected out of the water, and they can be relatively common. Here's an anemone on this just straight up and down wall. They can move a bit. They can creep along. I don't know where it wants to go, because whatever falls, it's doomed. There's Max again, and there's Magnus, who's a little bit more friendly because he waves instead of wants to fight with you. And we're going up now, and there's every crevice you can get into, because they're not getting knocked by ice and the sponges. The sponges don't like light so much, so they tend to be underneath things like this. Here's some more of the sea cucumbers. If you go dive anyplace else, most places you have sea cucumbers that suck up mud versus the ones that are out there suspension feeding like ours, where you have those very pretty little arms or tentacles out there. Here's the rest of the body, though. So they do kind of look like a cucumber, but they have tube feet, just like the sea stars do, that they can move around or hold themselves in this algae. This picture is reversed, so they're sucking air into their lungs, but I thought it looked better to see how steep it was. Here's another, whereas we're going up, I'm just watching the number of things falling off of this cliff. I mean, the Dorid nudibranchs sea stars, they've got up there. I don't know why they're going up there. It's like the guy that's pushing the rock up the mountain and it falls down each day. And then after the dive, then we got to clean ourselves off, and there's Max. Thanks.
My name's Anna Maleos. I work for the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust. I'm the operations manager for the trust. We are a UK-based not-for-profit organisation, or a registered charity, and our main purpose is to conserve historic buildings in Antarctica. Port Lockroy is one of the buildings we look after. It's the first British base built on the Antarctic Peninsula in 1944. It was established by the British during a naval operation with the intent to enhance Britain's claims on Antarctic territory by establishing a permanent base and operating a post office.
Off to Philadelphia.
A group of men were sent here on a top secret operation, which was codenamed Tabarin, so they weren't exactly aware where they were going, and to their surprise, they arrived in Antarctica. It's a building which housed between 4 and 5 men. So there's a really rather comfortable bunk room, I think, decorated with some attractive ladies from the 1950s. They had a science room, and their main focus was to study the upper atmosphere.
We've had a fabulous voyage. All in all, a very memorable and educational experience. And I want to thank everyone for being flexible in the itinerary and being interested and excited about doing what we've done during this voyage to the Antarctic Peninsula.
Oh.